we will be covering topics on the basis of rhythm. So this topic of architectural sketching basically covers few major points like the basics of sketching, principles and elements of composition, then architectural lettering, which also includes types of perspective drawings, then different styles of architectural sketching. And so so the people who are not from the architecture or interior design background, if you have any doubts regarding this point, then after the end of each point we will ask you if you have any doubts, then that time you can let us know. All right. So starting from point number 1, which is basics of architectural sketching. So when we learn about architectural sketching, we have to get one thing clear, that mastering the fundamental strokes is the primary point in architectural sketching. Like when we think of any drawing, or we think of any perspective or theme for sketching out an architectural diagram or an architectural drawing, then we have to first figure out how straight lines help us focusing on maintaining consistent pressure and direction. Like if you are working on a drawing with pencil, pen, or any highlighter, whichever tool you like, then the very first thing you should be focusing on is straight lines, because focusing on straight lines helps you to determine the exact composition of the entire drawing. Now, how does it help? So, what it does is, when you draft an architectural sketch, so that time you can figure out the entire paper space, and out of that paper space, you can figure out how much space you need precisely to draft that drawing, correct? So, if you are working on a paper space of like A2 size of paper or A3 size of paper, so by physically looking at that paper, you can uh, get the idea of exactly how much space you have for drafting that architectural sketch, correct? So maybe you may be drafting that architectural sketch by freehand, or maybe you are using tools like triangular scale, then maybe geometrical scales like protractor and everything. But basically, what straight lines do for you, they guide you through the entire paper space. So let me just present you one of the example where you can understand what straight lines do. Just let me share my screen with you all. Everyone see the screen which I have shared?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So previously, as what I told you, so the entire paper space, when you work it on all straight lines, it gives you exact idea how much space you are going to need to draft a specific architectural or interior design or civil engineering drawing, or any kind of drawing which you are planning to draft, maybe free-handedly or by using few tools, like which I told you, like triangular scale, everything. So this perspective does not apply only with freehand sketching. This perspective of paper space also applies to the drawings which you draft on the softwares like AutoCAD, SketchUp, 3D Max. Everywhere this the entire concept applies. So can anyone tell me what is exactly happening in this drawing, like in this sketch? What do you guys observe overall? Anyone?
So it's there is a here taken about the rendering, that
Correct.
is the atmospheric means perspective also has been taken here,
Correct.
and rendering also. But other than that, sir, I am unable to means bring it out that if it's 1 point, 2 point, or 3 point perspective.
So
Actually, I am
one
not.
point. So sorry to cut you off. So
Yeah.
1 point, 2 point, and 3 point perspective we will discuss later on in detail.
Okay.
So that is not an issue.
Okay. So atmospheric sir perspective and rendering has
Yes,
been taken care. Yeah.
So, but if I ask you that in layman's language, that what do you observe in this kind of drawing?
Yes, so in layman's language, I
What
can say.
kind of lines are primarily in use?
Pardon, sir, can you repeat once more?
So I'm just asking what kind of lines are primarily in use?
Yes, sir. So slanting lines are there,
Correct.
and cross lines are there, and some scribbling is there also.
Correct.
So these three, sir, I can see. Sir, I'm not an architecture student, but actually I'm an
No
artist.
problem.
Yeah.
Yes.
What I have
But,
observed, I have told you. Yeah.
Yes, correct. So what you have observed is absolutely right. So what we are seeing in this drawing, rather than drawing, we can call it as a sketch, which is a freehand sketch.
Yeah.
So we can observe many vertical lines, many horizontal lines, and few of the lines they are diagonal in nature. Okay, so the lines which are horizontal in shape or horizontal in direction, they express x-axis. You must all be knowing x, y, and z axis, correct? So the
Yes, sir.
lines which are horizontal in nature, they express x-axis of the entire paper space, correct? The lines which are vertical in nature or vertical in direction, they express which axis?
Y-axis.
Correct. So they express y-axis. So x and y-axis, the horizontal and the vertical lines, what they provide you is we call it as a 2D space, correct?
Okay, sir.
So if you have only one axis, for example, you have only x-axis, so it represents only a point, correct? But when you have y-axis along with the x-axis, like horizontal lines along with the vertical lines, so you get the entire 2D paper space, correct? And when you are working on a paper space, when you are sketching an architectural drawing, and suppose you want to give that drawing a proper depth, correct? So then that time we introduce z-axis along with x and y, correct? So along with horizontal and vertical lines, we also provide diagonal lines, which are neither vertical or neither perfectly horizontal, correct? So all these lines make up your 3D sketch, correct?
Okay,
So when we start focusing on straight lines, it also helps us focusing on maintaining consistent pressure and direction. for the strokes which we provide on our drafting tool, whichever drafting tool you are using, like suppose someone is very good with pencil sketch, then obviously, then if someone is very good in using highlighter colors, because this kind of sketch which you are seeing on the screen is basically a pencil sketch. No other tool is used for drafting this drawing, correct? So these kind of tools, they help you to focus on maintaining consistent pressure and direction, right? So why pressure? Because if you look at this drawing, there are few areas where uh, the color of the entire sketch is perfectly dark, correct? There are few areas which are darker in color, and there are few areas which are very lighter in color. So when you focus on straight lines and when you focus on maintaining consistent pressure and direction, after that we can progress to curves and circles. Because in this drawing or in this sketch, there are only horizontal, vertical, and diagonal lines. There are no curves, correct? So let me show you the second image. Can everybody see this image?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So what we have seen in the first image, those were all straight lines. So when you work on straight lines, the diagonal line which you draft on the z-axis gives you the depth of entire drawing, correct? Now, when you look at this image, what all shapes can you guys see? Can anyone tell me what all shapes can you guys observe in this kind of sketch?
The circle is there,
Correct.
sphere is there.
So this is the perfect circle.
Yeah.
Correct? So in this circle, the entire, so every radius, when you draft a circle, every radius is constant in measurement, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now this sketch has been drafted in 3D module, so that is why we are seeing it as an oval, but this is not an oval, correct?
Okay.
This is a circle, but we are seeing that circle in 3D format. That is why we are seeing it as a oval. What other shapes can you guys see in this kind of sketch?
Ellipse is there.
Correct. Where can you see the ellipse?
The outer circle.
Correct.
The third
So
one.
the circle which is exactly out of this the perfect circle, this is the ellipse, because it has gone out of the y-axis. When you look at this height, no, so it has gone out of this y-axis. That is why we know that it's a circle, but the radius differs each and every point, right? So this is an ellipse. What all other shapes can you see, guys? Let me tell you one from my side. Are you able to see my cursor?
Yes.
So yeah. So what we call this shape, this is an arc, correct? So what an arc does, when you draft any kind of architectural or interior design drawing, or if suppose if you are a civil engineer, or suppose if you are working in the field of commercial or commercial arts, fine arts. So in those kinds of fields, we always see the shapes like arc or parabola. You see this? This is a parabola. This is a concave parabola. This is a convex parabola. Again, if you look at the bottom of this entire structure, this is an arc, correct? This is again a concave parabola. What all other shapes can you see?
Straight lines.
Correct. I was waiting for that answer because along with these curves, you see straight lines too. Because what straight lines do, we have already discussed that x and y axis, which you see on a paper space, they give you the entire feeling of when you exactly draft out of that sketch. So they give you the feeling of 2D perspective, correct? If you draft straight lines on a paper, they give you the feeling of 2D perspective. And when you introduce these kind of curves, correct? When you introduce these kind of curves inside your sketch, they provide you the third axis, which we call it as Z axis. So these circles or these parabolas, these arches, okay, they give you the sense of 3D imaging. They give you the sense of depth, correct? They give you the sense of the presence of Z axis, correct? So that's why these circular curves or angles are really important. So they also help you to, in refining your ability to control the fluidic motion of the entire drawing. You guys must be able to see that this entire structure is going really fluidic in one direction. So if you start from the left hand side bottom, if you just keep rolling your eyes over the entire structure toward the right hand side direction, you can clearly see that it's a fluidic motion of hand movements, correct? So when you sketch something on paper, the most important part of the sketching is your hand movements. So whether you are using a pencil or a pen or a highlighter or any color for sketching, so that time fluidity in your entire drawing is really important. And to be honest, as we all know that only practice makes us perfect. So when you try to make strokes go very heavy, like go very deep, or when you try to give that lighting kind of effect, if some sunlight is falling or any artificial light, form of light, like tube light or ceiling light is falling on some object, so that time the shadow effect which we give can only be given by the means of strokes, right? So if you want to make that shadow a little bit darker, so all the strokes which you make by your drafting tool, may it be a pencil or pen or any highlighter, so the the precise strokes, and also they help you to build your muscle memory, because when you practice to draft these drawings on a regular basis, or when you practice to freehand sketch these drawings, so it also helps you to build your muscle memory, because every time you use a specific tool, you get used to it, correct? So if you are using a HB pencil for drafting these kind of drawings, so you know how HB pencil works, correct? So when you work with 8H pencil and you have just practiced with 2B pencil, so you don't know how 8H pencil works. And why this matters, because drafting tools are really important in understanding the contrast system which we provide inside our drafted layout, or which we also call it as freehand sketch, correct? So till now, anyone has any doubts? You can ask your questions if you have any.
No, sir.
Okay. So moving on to the next point, which is understanding your light and bold strokes. Correct. Does anyone know what light and bold stroke means?
On this sketch, there are both on the structure. Few we can see there are some dark strokes.
Correct. So let me show you one example of dark and light strokes. Correct. So let me zoom in this image. Are you guys able to see this image?
Yeah.
Okay. So looking at all these handcrafted sketches of the interiors of any hotel or any living space or any bedroom or any dining area, what exactly do you observe when you understand light and bold sketches?
I think the pressure on the strokes matters when it comes to light and
Correct, correct.
dark.
So why do you think that while we apply pressure on our drafting tool, so here onwards what we'll do is our drafting tool, we will consider it as pencil or a pen or a highlighter. When I say drafting tool, means your tool which you use, whatever tool you use to draft your drawing, correct? So what exactly your point you have just made is, when we apply pressure on that drafting tool, it becomes darker, it becomes bolder, and what that does is it creates a specific kind of contrast as compared to what we have previously drafted, correct? So if you are using a tool like pencil and you are holding that pencil away from that tip, you cannot apply that kind of pressure when you hold that tip uh, very much near to the your fingers. You get what I'm saying? So when you hold that pencil near to the tip, you can apply as much pressure as you want. And if you want to give lighter shades or lighter strokes to a specific drawing, then you can just hold your pencil a little bit further away from the tip of that pencil. Correct. So what we can see in this drawing is, if you look at this ceiling area, correct, in this living space, your ceiling area is entirely light in color. Anybody has any idea why is that so?
Because of lack of shadows.
Correct. Because whenever you draft a particular sketch, so the shadows always fall on the ground. Does anyone has an objection on this statement? When you draft shadows for a particular object, where do they fall?
On the ground.
Correct. Now, why is that? Because when we draft a particular sketch in which we are showing that this sketch has been drafted keeping in mind that the lighting which we are providing, it's natural lighting. And what we mean by natural lighting is particularly the sun. So when we are drafting a sketch, or you are out on a field, suppose you have gone for an industrial visit for any kind of heritage site or architectural site. So when you start drafting that sketch, live sketch, So obviously you have to keep in mind that we are talking about natural lighting, and natural lighting means only the sunlight, correct? So the sunlight always falls on the ground. That is why when we draft a particular sketch, may it be interior designing in the field of interior designing or civil engineering or architecture, whichever field you are in. That is why basically we draft the entire ceiling lighter in color as compared to the flooring and other uh, objects in that space. So if you look at all these four drawings, you can observe that ceiling has been very light in color. Okay, all the other objects are either light or dark in color because we have to provide the effect of depth. If we have to provide the effect of depth, obviously the shadow of the object will fall on the ground, but the overall feel of that space will be particularly decided upon how much darker strokes you use and how much lighter strokes you use, because primarily we are not using colors in pencil sketching. Because what happens is, if you observe that suppose we are all using smartphones, correct? If you go to a particular space, okay, and if you have your smartphone along with you, you take a picture of it, you look at that picture on your 2D screen, but you get to know that this is a 3D space. Why? Because there are different kinds of color combinations, correct? But when we draft it, the entire space, when we draft it on a 2D paper, correct? The paper space. So that time we have to give the effect of depth. That time we use lighter and darker strokes. Correct. So the light strokes are the basic foundational for the initial sketches. They allow you to map out the basic structure without committing to fixed lines. Correct. So when you use lighter strokes, like suppose you have just started drafting a sketch, so that time what you do, by basic instinct, what you do is you start to draft lighter strokes. You get to know the feeling of that space. You try to map out that space in your restricted 2D paper space, correct? Because you are working on an A2 size paper, A3 size paper, so you know that I have to draft this entire space. Like if if you have gone for the industrial visit for any historical site, any uh, historical monument or architectural site, you know that this space is 100 meter by 100 meters, but you have to draft it on a 2D paper which is of the size of A2. So that is why when you use lighter and darker strokes, that time you can use lighter strokes for building the basic structure, without committing to the fixed lines, correct? Because using the lighter structures helps you, to uh, change those particular layout on a later stage. And what bold strokes do is applied with when these bold strokes are applied with increased pressure on your drafting fluid. So what they do is they bring clarity and definition to your final sketch. Correct. So when you start drafting, you use lighter shades and lighter strokes on your drawing, and once you are satisfied with your uh, combination and your colonization of that 2D paper, then you start using bolder strokes to give the drawing exact uh, clarity and definition to the final sketch, correct? It also helps you, what I feel is it also helps you to emphasize the key features of drawing. So if you look at this first sketch, so by looking at it, you already know that it's a living space. When we are rendering or sketching an interior design project or an interior designing sketch, so we already know that this is a living space, right? We already know that this second drawing is dining space. we get to know that this is a living space, but it also can be used for library purposes or entertainment purposes, because we see a TV and everything on the right hand side wall, and we see a bookshelf and entire the structure which is erected with plywood and whatever material they have used. So this is a library space. And looking at this fourth drawing, the fourth sketch, we already know that this is a bedroom. This is a proper bedroom inside a residential space, correct? So, can anyone tell me what tools can be used to, sketch out a particular space on a paper? I just need you guys to answer what tools can you use,
Pencil.
correct? So, what are different kinds of pencils? Like, can you tell me?
2B, HB,
Correct,
3B, 8B,
So,
10B.
yes, yes. So, those kinds of codes, uh, those kinds of codes are dedicated to the power of contrast,
Yes,
the
sir.
contrast which a pencil can create on a white paper, correct? You get to know what I'm saying.
Yes, sir.
So that is why that notation is always mentioned on those drafting tools. Even if you are using a pen, on that pen also, it is always mentioned that this pen is of 0.5 mm ink ball, correct? 0.7 mm, 0.9 mm, 1 mm. So those kinds of technical specification help you to experiment with various like pencil tools, the tools like drafting pens or highlighters, and they also help us to understand the different levels of hardness and darkness, correct? So let me show you one other photo, one other image. See what else can you guys observe in this kind of sketch?
Macron pen.
Sorry.
Is it a Macron?
Correct. Yes. So this is not a pencil effect. This is a Macron pen, which we have used for sketching out the entire space. What else can you guys observe?
So 2 point perspective.
Correct. What else?
So then flora and fauna also. Flora, trees
Correct.
and vehicles, roads and
Correct.
Use of shading to define the.
Can you guys observe that few of the elements are darker in color as well as they are more detailed as compared to few other elements?
yes, sir.
Correct. So this is the effect of lighter and bolder strokes, right? When you look at these buildings which are little bit further ahead, those which are in the background, those are very lighter in shade, correct? And the corner building which we can see along with the pedestrian way, the vehicles and roads which you can see in this drawing, and along with that there is a podium, there is a garden space on the first, second, and third floor, and also the residential space which is constructed above those areas, correct? So this is the primary emphasis on in this kind of particular sketch, correct? So all these lighter and bolder strokes, they provide you the foundation. Strokes obviously they no they are the foundational for initial sketches. They allow you to map out the basic structure, and you don't have to commit to any fixed lines when you draft a lighter stroke, correct? And when you draft a bolder stroke, that means you have finalized your overall design. Anyone has any doubt regarding this lighter and bolder strokes? Whatever you guys feel like asking, you can definitely ask.
Sir, I have one question.
Yeah,
So generally, actually, when we use sketching for creating value, as I know, actually, in the art area, when we are projecting something which is far away from our eyes, so they are
correct.
darker in shade. So in this picture, sir, I can see that the buildings which are far away, they are little lighter, but means hazy. So is it so that the person is trying to show that is a fog effect or what actually? Because why they are not darker, sir? Because they are away from the front buildings, sir. So can you please explain?
Correct. So what at uh, the draftsman.
Yes,
So
sir.
what effect the draftsman has conveyed us through this sketch is, maybe there is a fog effect. That is also right. But
Okay.
speaking about in the terms of architecture or interior design or any kind of field which is related to all these architecture fields. So what architects and designers do is they always try to focus on the thing which is most important among all those things, correct?
Okay.
And on this drawing, it is not handwritten that this kind of building which we see on the corner space is the most important.
Yes, yes.
Anywhere it is not written.
Okay.
But by looking at the drawing, you can always figure out that this is the most important building out of other buildings which
Yes,
which
sir.
they have drafted in that particular space.
Okay.
Okay. So what architects and designers do is they draft out the entire space first by using lighter strokes. Correct?
Okay.
Obviously, the person who has made this drawing has used lighter shades first.
Yes.
If you look at the buildings which are further ahead, like in the utmost background, they are very much lighter in space. Correct? And the building which he has to emphasize on, like he wanted to get our attention to this particular building which lies in the corner of the entire street. Correct?
Yes, sir.
That is why he has given so many details and so many contrast and so many white balances by applying lighter and darker strokes together. Otherwise, in other buildings, you can see only lighter strokes, most probably. Correct?
Yes, sir.
So this is the effect of lighter and bold strokes. Does anyone have any doubt related to this basics of sketching? Anyone? So we have fundamental strokes, then lighter and bold strokes, and the tools which we use for sketching. So among these points, if you have any doubt, please do let me know. Anyone? Can we then move further ahead on the next topic?
Yes, sir.
All right. So, have you heard the term called principles and elements of composition in the field of architecture or in the field of commercial or commercial arts, finance, or any kind of field which is related to art? Have you heard the term called principles and elements of composition?
Yes, sir.
So, anyone from the field of architecture or any art field can. May I get to know what exactly do you understand by the principles and elements of composition? Like any, you can give any 2, 3 examples. Like who wants to answer this?
Like balance, rhythm,
Repetition.
proportion,
Correct.
repetition, contrast.
Correct.
off the top of my head. Yeah.
Golden ratio, sir. Rule of third.
Okay. Anything else?
Datum and focus.
Correct. And what?
Focal point.
Focal point is the term which we use in topics when we talk about 1 point, 2 point, 3 point perspectives.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
So that is also a valid point, but we use it in the points when we cover this architectural, perspective drawings. But when we talk about principles and elements of composition, whenever you are compositing one specific sketch or one specific drawing, maybe by the means of drafting tools, maybe by freehand, or maybe you are drafting those drawings in AutoCAD or any other software which you use on your computers. At that time, we use specific principles of design and specific elements of position. Okay, so as you guys told us, so the basic principles and elements consist primarily of these four points which I am about to tell you. The first, balance. The second one is harmony. The third one is contrast. And fourth one is rhythm. Okay, if you guys need to note those down, then you can definitely write it down, because all these points will help you to understand the definition also and their use when you start to sketch or draft a particular drawing on 2D paper or 3D space in AutoCAD. Right? So the first point becoming the balance. Can anyone tell me what balance means in the particular drafted sketch or drawing in our field? What balance means? What is balance? What kind of balance can you achieve when you are drafting a particular sketch?
It's about how the elements weigh in with respect to each other as well as the entire picture. And
balance-
psychologically, it should give a feeling of ease.
Correct.
Balance of space.
Correct. Balance of space.
Asymmetrical balance.
Yes. What else can you achieve when you provide balance to your sketch?
Sir, looking about the negative and the positive space also.
Okay. What else can you achieve by bringing balance to your design?
Stability, it can bring
Correct.
stability.
Yes. The stability is the most important part in bringing balance to your drafting or sketching. So what you can achieve through balance is, symmetry and asymmetry. Everyone knows what symmetry and asymmetry means, correct? So we
Yes,
can
sir.
achieve balance through symmetrical or asymmetrical arrangements of elements. When you are drafting a particular drawing, then the elements which you are trying to impose in that drawing has to be symmetrical or asymmetrical. That everyone agrees, correct? Either those elements or objects are symmetrical or they are asymmetrical, correct?
Yes.
So through balance, we can also consider the visual weight also of each component. Now, what visual weight means? Like if we are using 8 different kinds of objects in a particular drawing, any kind of drawing, okay? So what visual may anyone can answer me what visual weight means? Visual weight.
It's a It's a way to determine how your view is being attracted towards that element.
Correct. So visual weight means that when you look at particular drawing, when you look at particular sketch, or if you are planning to draft out that particular sketch, then you can always use visual weight for each and every different kind of element or each and every different kind of object which you are planning to use in that drawing. Correct? So what it does is it ensures that all those elements, like all those objects you are planning to draft inside that group are properly aligned. Correct? They also ensure that those objects are evenly distributed across all of the paper space. So let me show you an example. So suppose everybody see this new image.
Yes, sir.
So this is not properly hand drafted. This is a particular photograph of a particular space in Shanghai, right? So what the photographer has done is he has divided the entire paper space, actually photograph, in 4 equal parts. Can anyone tell me how he has done it? He has done it by dividing the paper space in 4 equal parts, except the plane which we are seeing. Ignore the airplane which we are seeing in the drawing, but look at all the other aspects of this photograph. The photographer has exactly managed to divide this entire photo in 4 equal parts. Now, how that? Can anyone tell me?
The building is strict, so
Correct. How is it symmetric? Can you tell me?
the design of the building, like
Correct.
you said, it's been divided into 4 parts. So all the 4 parts look really similar when you just look at it. It's very balanced and calming if you see that.
Correct. So, may it not be a properly hand drafted sketch, it's just an image. But what you told me is absolutely right. What he has done is he has first divided this image into 2 equal parts vertically. If you draw a vertical line in this image, the left hand side and right hand side will be exactly similar to each other. Not 100%, but at least 99%, correct? Do you all agree?
Yes.
And what he has also managed, what the photographers has also managed is he has divided this image horizontally too. Correct? So if you fold this entire paper space horizontally, or if you fold this entire paper space vertically, you will get to see the exact replica of one another, which we also call it as mirror imaging. Correct? What else can you guys observe in this entire photo?
The photo has a focal point. The airplane becomes the focal point.
Correct. The focal point is the most important thing in these kind of sketches or these kind of photographs, because this is what we call it as one point perspective. If you look at all the diagonal lines which are near horizontal or vertical, they all the diagonal lines converge at one single point. Correct me if I'm wrong. Diagonal lines converge to one single point, and all the other horizontal and vertical lines, they don't converge at one single point. Correct?
Yes.
So that effect creates the focal point which you just mentioned, right? Can anyone tell me why is that so? Because obviously when we use a 2D paper space, correct, if you are drafting a sketch on a 2D paper, obviously the plane of the paper is two-dimensional. So that time vertical and horizontal lines, when they collide with each other, they create a point. But not in this case. Why is that so?
Because our level is below the building, sir.
That is true, but remember what we have discussed, like the very first point which we had discussed, x-axis, y-axis.
Yes, x-axis, y-axis.
So when you are using a 2D paper space, that time if you have to create a focal point like this airplane in the sky, so you can give that focal point a reasoning by intersecting x and y axis only. But now in this particular image, we are also talking about depth. We are also talking about 3D space. That is why we have to introduce another third axis, which we also call it as z-axis, correct? And when z-axis becomes the primary focal point, then obviously x and y-axis have to go away. They have to move away from the z-axis to create that effect of depth, which we clearly can see in this image. Particularly speaking, this creates the effect of height. If we have to, talk in a literal manner, because these are buildings. The kind of photo the photographer has taken, this image can give us the feeling of height rather than depth. But to be honest, on the z-axis, height and depth are always the same. If you are talking about height, then it is a positive z-axis. If you are talking about depth, it is a negative z-axis. But both are lie on the z-axis itself. Correct? So by looking at this image, we can clearly, understand what balance means. Anyone has any doubt about this? The very first point which we have covered, like the balance in principles and elements of composition. Anyone? Any doubt? If you have, you can ask me.
Sorry to ask again, but can you repeat in simpler terms about what exactly is balance? I understand it.
I'm so sorry. I'm really not able to hear you loudly.
I'm sorry. I meant, can you explain once again in very simple terms what exactly?
So, in very simple terms, okay, forget about all of the things which we have talked right now. In very simple terms, I'll tell you what balance means. Okay. So, if you are drafting out a particular sketch, if you are drafting out a particular layout, may it be a field of architecture, may it be a field of interior designing, may it be a field of civil engineering or fine arts, commercial, or whatever field it is. So, what balance means is the symmetrical or asymmetrical arrangements of all the elements which you are planning to draft in that particular sketch. Okay?
Not okay, because these are the only two options available. It's either going to be symmetrical or it is going to be asymmetrical.
That is what I'm trying to tell you, that when you are trying to, when you are planning to draft a particular sketch or a drawing, any kind of drawing, how can you achieve balance? Either all the elements are symmetrical in shape as well as position, or you can achieve balance by putting all those elements in asymmetrical format when they are compared to their shape, sizes, and location. You understand what I'm saying? Suppose your drawing is in if you have drafted your entire drawing in perfectly symmetrical shape, correct? So does that give you balance?
Yes, like this picture right now.
Correct. It's the picture right now. Now, if you imagine all your components, okay, each and every component inside your sketch, but they all are asymmetrical, correct? So the object which you are drafting on the left hand side of your paper space does not match with the right hand side of your paper space. The object which you have drafted on the top of your paper space does not match with the bottom of your paper space. And each and every other object complements to each and every other object. That gives you the perfect asymmetry. Okay? That gives you the perfect asymmetry of the entire paper space in which you are drafting your drawing.
Right.
So by itself, it becomes balance. Because, see, in layman's language, what I'm trying to tell you is, when you are trying to achieve balance, when your primary focus is to achieve balance, you will always use symmetry, correct?
Right.
In layman's language, correct? Right. You will always use symmetry when you are trying to achieve balance. But when you try to introduce all the elements or all the objects in your drawing which are asymmetric in shape, but they are spread across entire paper space of your draft, entire paper space of your sketch, that also creates balance.
Okay.
Right?
So, can you explain it with the first image that you showed of this?
Which one?
The first image that you showed, the construction
the previous one, which you are telling me.
The first one.
The first one, correct. This one?
Yeah. So
yeah.
How was the balance attained in this particular? Is it the usage of space, or is it the texture, or is it the color balance? How is it?
So see, if we look at this drawing, there are, first of all, there are no colors. Okay.
Yeah, I meant the bold and light.
Correct. Okay. So the very first point which we had discussed, that this drawing mainly consists of only straight lines. This we all agree?
Yes.
Correct. So if you ask me if this drawing maintains balance in itself, if you ask me, then obviously I knew that this does not maintain balance, because each and every element is different in shape, different in texture. Do you agree?
Yes.
Correct. But when you look at all the straight lines which we have used in this particular sketch, okay, each and every other object complements each other. Nothing is out of place.
Yes.
Correct. So if we use particular objects which are all inside their own vicinity or own location, that means that they are perfectly balanced. Why? Because each and every other element complements each and every other element in this particular drawing. If you ask me how this drawing is balanced, right? So if you talk geometrically, this is not balanced. All those geometrical shapes are never balanced in this drawing. But when you bring together all these elements and components like shading, pencil sketching, all the different textures which you are using on different surfaces, correct? They complement each other. Do you think that any one of the object is out of its place?
No. So you mean to say that the balance can be brought about in part, but not in whole.
Correct. So when we try to achieve balance,
parts are balanced.
no. See, you don't have to look at only the parts and sizes of these shapes, correct? Overall, what this sketch tries to intend you is, you see all these container kinds of structures which they have put on one another.
Yes.
Correct. So what this sketch is trying to tell you is that this is not geometrically symmetrical. Correct. There is no geometrically symmetric element in this entire sketch. Correct. But when you try to put all these different elements inside this single piece of art, okay, after that, do you feel that any one of the element is out of its place?
No.
So that is called balance. That's what I was trying to tell you guys, that balance can be brought to the paper space by achieving symmetrical geometrical designs as well as asymmetrical geometrical designs, provided that all the objects complement each other. No object is placed, if you feel like one of the object is very much out of its place, very much out of its color combination, very much out of its contrast or white balances, when you try to sketch or give those lighter or darker shades to that particular object. If you don't feel that any of the object is never out of its place, then the drawing is perfectly balanced. Simple. Anyone has any doubt about this? So let me give you another example of balance where you can see now. Can everyone see this image?
Yes, it's visible.
So in the previous image, in this one, we were getting balance through symmetry, correct? Vertically as well as horizontally. Correct?
Yes.
So in this particular kind of architectural structure, now what kind of symmetry or balance you are getting, horizontal or vertical?
Horizontal.
Sorry?
Horizontal.
Okay. And what else can you observe in this image?
The arches are symmetrical.
Correct. So the specific shapes which we had discussed in the topic number 2, different kinds of shapes like circle, arches, parabolas, hyperbolas, ovals, all kinds of shapes you can see in this image. If you look at the bottom of every column, it is either a circle or a hexagon or an octagon. You can see arches, the top of the roof. You can see capitals. You if you don't know what capital means, it means the uppermost structure of a column, which gives column the ability to converge into the ceiling or the slab which we provide above the entire structure. So when you say that this drawing or this photo is horizontally balanced, that means there is a vertical line going from the bottom to the utmost top, which balances the entire space horizontally. Correct? Does anyone have any doubts regarding this horizontal balance?
Can you please summarize it again in like a one-liner? What is horizontal balance?
Okay. So in the previous image, we could see that this entire photograph has been aligned properly, vertical and symmetrically also in vertical and horizontal manner, correct? Suppose this is a piece of paper, correct? If you fold it in half horizontally, what will become? Those two spaces which you create by folding that paper, those are perfectly symmetrical,
Yes.
correct? If you fold that paper vertically also, then you create two different spaces which are perfectly symmetrical to each other, correct?
Yes.
So that is called balance in the terms of verticality also and horizontality also, correct? Now in this second image, what is happening is the entire space is balanced out of symmetry only horizontally.
Yeah. Okay.
If you fold this particular sheet of paper only horizontally, like if you draw a vertical straight line, and on that straight line if you fold this paper, so this drawing is symmetric in nature only horizontally. But when you try to draw a horizontal line and try to fold this paper vertically,
it won't be symmetrical.
Yeah, it won't be symmetrical, right? So the very first photograph which I showed you is a four-way balance, and the second photo which I am showing you right now is a two-way balance.
Okay.
Like it can be this entire photo, or if it was a sketch, the sketch could have been balanced out of symmetry in only one particular way, which is horizontally. This we all agree? If anyone has any doubt regarding this particular structure. Can we move on to the next image?
Yes.
All right. Now, as we have already discussed the first and second image about balance, now you can easily tell me what is happening in this image.
When we fold this vertically along a horizontal line, it will be symmetrical.
Correct. So if you draw a horizontal line across all this draft or sketch or photograph, whatever it is, so if you draw a horizontal line, the paper can be folded in such a way that vertically the entire triangular or that pyramid structure coincides with the bottom structure. The upper and the lower side are perfectly similar, because this pyramid structure has given an the reflection effect onto that water element. But when you try to fold this image horizontally, like if you draw a vertical line and you then try to converge those two sides onto each other, they won't be perfectly symmetrical. Correct? That is why I was trying to explain you guys that balance can be obtained by symmetry as well as asymmetry. It does not mean that only symmetrical objects or symmetrical designs are always in balance. We can also achieve balance through asymmetry, provided that there is some symmetry or there is some kind of interaction between all those elements, vertically, horizontally, or any other like axis which you are trying to impose those positions on. If anyone has doubts related to the balance term, you can ask me. we move ahead on the second point?
Yes.
All right. So this is not an hand-drafted sketch, definitely. But what we can observe in this image is that it establishes, basically what it does is establishes a consistent design language. Okay. And how does it do it? Can anyone tell me? It specifically establishes a consistent design language. And how is it? Can anyone tell me?
Form.
Hello? Yeah?
The lines.
Okay. By lines, you mean all kinds of shapes, right?
Yeah.
Correct. And what else? Like what I'm trying to ask you guys is what makes this kind of drawing very appealing to our eyes? Very much appealing. There are so many elements in this drawing. But what are the specific things that are making this drawing that much visually appealing? That's what I'm trying to ask you.
So use of z-axis.
Colors.
Okay.
Colors has been added.
Correct. So the first one was shapes, like basically lines. The second one is colors. And what else can you observe?
Bold highlight.
Texture.
Correct. Texture. So
Also realistic elements.
correct. So the realistic elements, what basically means is the specific kind of structure or the specific kind of texture which you provide to the surface elements. So particularly talking about this drawing, we can clearly see that there are particular shapes, this waterfall kind of a shape. Can everyone see?
Yes.
So this waterfall kind of a shape is complementing the entire building structure also, and the entire ground area, which we also call it as the pedestrians walking area and everything. So this gives continuity, and the continuity term can also be addressed as harmony. So the second most important principle and element of composition is harmony. The first one was balance. The second one is harmony. Now, what exactly it does is it establishes a consistent design language, okay, in terms of similar shapes, in terms of complementing colors, and in terms of matching textures throughout the entire space. Okay, if you look at the green spaces, like vertical green wall, or the grass which has laid on the ground, so every texture, every color, every shape is complementing each other. So that when we aim for the cohesive or unified visual narrative, and that also aligns with the intended message that all these elements are in each other. So that's when we know that this is the harmony which we are trying to implement in our sketches. Anyone has any doubts about this harmony thing? If you look at these waterfall shapes, they are complementing each other. If you look at these green colored pedestrians walking space, or if you look at these brown colored pedestrian walking space, they are complementing each other. There are different kinds of shape. There are straight lines, there are curves, there is the effect of depth, there is an effect of height. Everything is there, but nothing is looking out of space. That is why this image is balanced as well as in harmony. If anyone has any doubts related to this second term called harmony, you can ask. Anyone? Can we move on to the next point?
Okay.
All right. So this was the another example for the point which we just now discussed, harmony. So in this, all these colors, those are not wall colors, okay? Those are just the layers of colors which we have applied on the original image, right? So if you look at the harmony, like how can you identify that it's harmonical in nature? This entire space or this entire elevation is harmonical in nature, because first of all, if you look at this pink colored highlighted area and this pink colored highlighted, they are symmetrical first of all, correct? And they are in harmony. Why? Because they have similar shapes. If you look at these pink colored highlighted areas, they have similar shapes. That's why they are in harmony. Now, if you look at the textures or designs which they have provided in this entire elevation, if you look at this arc, correct? So the first arc is round in shape, the second arc is triangular in shape, and the third arc is again round in shape. And the same pattern which we can see on the right hand side also. So that is why this elevation is perfectly balanced by symmetry. Few drawings are balanced by symmetry and few drawings are balanced by asymmetry. But in this particular drawing, this particular elevation is balanced by symmetry, by shapes, balanced by symmetry through textures, right? And also they are in harmony. Correct? If you look at this particular elevation on the first floor or the ground floor, they are perfectly symmetrical to each other. That's why they are symmetrically balanced. And also they have same shape, they have same texture, and that is why they are in harmony. So these kind of layers of colors is only to represent that which area is in accordance to which other area. If you look at this red rectangular layer, so all of the structural details which we can see inside this particular layer is repeated in the middle of the drawing as well as on the right hand side. And if you look at all the other objects which are either green in layered or dark blue in layer, they are perfectly aligned symmetrically as well as they are in harmony with each other. So this drawing actually explains what balance and harmony simultaneously. Right? If we move on to the next sketch, now what all effects can you guys observe in this sketch? which is basically our third important principle of composition, which is called contrast. Now, what the term contrast is in effect in this particular kind of sketch,
Harsh and soft strokes.
correct? Light and dark strokes, you can say, correct?
Yeah, and light and dark shading.
Correct. And when you look at the contrast in each and every element of this sketch,
Yeah, shapes also. Few
correct.
are
So what kind of effect does that contrast give you?
It differentiates the type of the building and the type of orientation it has.
Correct. What else?
Sir, light and shadows effect.
Correct. Light and shadow effects. Actually, the term contrast highlights primarily to the light and shadow effects which you are trying to impose in your particular sketch or draft. Correct. So light and shadow effect also gives you the definition of depth or height. If you look at this sketch, so the primary contrast which they are trying to create is, if you look at those buildings which are the farthermost, like in the background, they are very much lighter in color because they are trying to emphasize our attention to this particular curved structure, and for that they have used contrast. Now we can also utilize contrast in tonal values or colors. Now in this sketch they have used only just pencil, so there are no colors. But if you are drafting a colored structure also, then you can use tonal values, colors, or line weights. For example, if you look at the line weight of these drafted lines, okay, they are very much different to these line weights. Okay. These line weights are particularly thicker in nature, so they are a little bit thick if you consider their diameter or cross sectional area. But if you look at these lines, they are very much thinner in shape. Why? Because they were trying to emphasize all the details which they could provide, like contrast, color balance, white balance. You can see all those lighter as well as darker strokes in this kind of structure, which gives you the feeling of shadow and lighting as well as the feeling of depth. Correct? What else can you guys observe when we talk about contrast in our particular sketch? So let me tell you that if you observe this particular curved kind of structure, so you may have a feeling that this structure is not perfectly balanced. But if you look at this entire structure vertically, if you start from the topmost edge of this structure, okay, topmost edge of this structure, so this is very light in color. As you go further ahead downwards, this is little bit of darker in color. Go ahead downwards, this is the most dark area in this entire drawing. And the reverse happens when you go towards the downward side, the bottom side. So the middle area is the most darkest. Then there is semi-dark area, which they have used the medium kind of dark shade. And again, there is very much lighter shades in the bottom area. So this also represents balance. May it not be geometrical balance, but it is a visual balance in terms of contrast. Does anyone have any doubt regarding contrast? Anyone? Can we move the next point, please? Guys,
Yes.
okay. So this is also a good example of contrast. See, in this drawing, there's a good utilization in total values. Also, may it not be in color because it's a proper hand-drafted pencil sketch, but you can observe line weights and tonal values of each and every element of this structure. Wherever they wanted to put the shadow effect, okay, they have used darker tones, and wherever they wanted to keep the lighting effect, like natural light or maybe artificial light, they have used lighter tones, correct? So these lighter tones and darker tones together contribute to contrast, right? If you look at these elevational lines also, you can see that there are shadows as well as reflections on these glasses, correct? Why? Because shadows and reflections always contribute to contrast. Moving on to the next point. See, the fourth most important point in all the principles and the elements which we're trying to discuss is rhythm. Okay, what rhythm does? Suppose your drawing, your sketch has to be, incorporating rhythm inside those elements. So, how can you identify rhythm inside your drawing or any kind of photograph? If you are a photographer, if you are a fine art student, how can you identify rhythm inside your sketch? Can anyone tell me? How can you find rhythm?
Repetition.
Okay, repetition and
Texture. Continuous texture.
continuous texture. Correct, correct. So what this particular image is trying to tell you, that don't look at me at a single point. If you start looking at this drawing, suppose if you start looking at these curves, no, your eyes will automatically roll over to all the other curves. Automatically, you don't have to ask your brain. You don't have to force your eyes. If you look at this drawing, your eyes will automatically start rolling on all of these curves. That's when you come to know that it's in proper rhythm. Correct? Let me show you one more example of rhythm. See, in the first image, we were able to see all these curves. Okay, so there was a repetition of curves. Okay, the first point which you guys told me, and there was the second point, which was the continuation of curves. Correct? And if we talk about the rectangular shapes or any other shape which is not related to curve or circles, so now in this image we can clearly see that these outside panels or outside glasses which they have used in the outermost elevation of the entire structure, they may not be complementing each other in terms of symmetry. All right, no problem. But when we talk about rhythm, when you look at this image, you can observe that it creates a sense of flow, right? Also in the first image, there was a sense of flow. Something was flowing. may it be a round shape, may it be a rectangular shape, however you would like to put those elements in shape. But what rhythm does is it creates a sense of flow by arranging all those elements in a way, in such a way that it guides the user or the viewer through that entire sketch. If you start looking at this particular photo, you cannot stop. You cannot stop looking at one particular place, and you cannot tell that this particular object is the primary object of this entire sketch or in this entire photograph. You cannot tell. There is no such object, singular object, that which is the the main point of attraction in this entire sketch or image. Correct. So when we have the sense of flow by arranging all these circular or rectangular elements in such a way that it guides your eyes through the entire sketch, so that time we come to know that it's in a rhythmic position or some kind of rhythm is always there. Also, the use of repetition of particular shapes or the use of variation in shapes, but always strategically, not in any abrupt manner. No, the use of repetition of shapes and variations in shapes also get us to establish a rhythm that will enhance the overall composition of the entire structure. So if you look at this image, you must be observing that the entire vertical panels are complementing each other through rhythm. But if you look at the staircase also, they are also complementing. Each and every stair is complementing each other by the term called rhythm. Because as I already told you that repetition and variation, by variation but strategic variation, not abrupt variation. Repetition is all right, but variation which is strategic in terms of geometry as well as in terms of shape, which will try to establish a particular enhancement in overall composition of your drawing. That is called rhythm. Does anyone have any doubt? Does anyone have any other doubt related to the points which we have covered, like the basics of sketching, fundamental strokes, light and bold strokes, everything, like all the sketching tools, the principles and elements which we have discussed, all the balance, harmony, contrast and rhythm. Those are four the most important principles in the field of art. So whatever we have covered just now, if anyone has any doubts, please go ahead and ask me. Can we move ahead to the next topic?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So the next topic of our discussion will be the architectural lettering. So the lettering in layman's terms, which we call it as nomenclature, in every kind of drawing, all across architecture, interior designing, civil engineering, or any art form like commercial arts, fine arts, photography, everything. So there is a term called architectural lettering. So what architectural lettering means? Can anyone tell me?
The way of representing your drawing through writing.
Correct. What more can you achieve by providing lettering inside your sketch or any kind of drawing?
More clarity for the design or the concept
Correct.
that you're presenting.
Correct. You can always
Maybe
use
some drawing.
lettering. Yeah. Go ahead, please. Yeah, what were you saying?
Drawing detail.
Providing details, correct?
Proper specifications about the
Correct.
design.
So through lettering, what we can achieve is all those material specifications, like what kind of material they are using while drafting, or that particular sketch, or executing that sketch actually on site. So all those material specifications, all those measurements for those materials, those sizes, right? All those can be achieved by the help of architectural lettering, which we also call it as nomenclature. So what it does is it develops a consistent lettering style, okay, and that style has to be aligned with the project's overall aesthetic and professionalism. Those aesthetics are non-negotiable, because, for example, if you are working in the field of interior design and you are interior designer yourself, if you are providing a particular kind of drawing to your client, for example, okay, so you have to follow aesthetics for your drawing and as well as professionalism. But what this kind of architectural lettering helps you to do is, or helps you to achieve, is you can provide each and every detail of your drawing, may it be in the form of numerics or may it be in the form of alphabets, which can represent each and every detail of your drawings, this in terms of sketching, in terms of material specifics, in terms of measurements, whatever you can name it.
Hello.
Yeah.
Have you changed the image? I can still see the.
So sorry. So as you can see in this image, so there is a particular elevation drafted on a piece of paper. Okay, there are simple vertical and horizontal lines, and there are simple measurements given. Okay, so this particular kind of drawing is actually a field view of existing vault. Some kind of vault they have to build. So what they have done is, first they have drafted the entire space. They have drafted all horizontal and vertical lines, which will represent the entire 2D top view of that particular space. And
It's
they
a
have
plan, right?
Sorry.
It's a plan, right?
Correct. So it's a vertical view. If you look at the plan, it's a top view. Right. So they have tried to incorporate all the verbal elements, or all the technical details, all the measurements in one particular drawing, which will help you to understand what this kind of vault consists of, what are the sizes, correct? Also, they have mentioned the north direction, which is always helpful when we talk about Vastu Shastra and everything. Correct? Those are also the very much important things, like Vastu Shastra, the directional alignment of all the objects inside any particular space. So through architectural lettering, all these things can be achieved, which contribute to develop a consistent lettering style. For example, this guy has tried to implement a particular lettering style through his drawing. Now, if this drawing gets circulated all across any architectural office or interior design firm. So by making alignments in lettering style, this guy has tried to project aesthetics as well as professionalism by simply making a freehand sketch and providing architectural lettering inside that sketch. Now there are different kinds of architectural lettering styles. So one user can also experiment with classic serif fonts, for getting basic traditional feel. Or there are different kinds of font. One of my favorite font is called Architect's Daughter. If you Google it, so there is a font called Architect's Daughter. So that kind of font when we work in the field of interior design, when we draft our sketches or we draft our drawings, those kinds of fonts we use in our architectural lettering. So particularly telling about myself, the most favorite font which I use for architectural lettering is called Architect's Daughter. So there are different kinds of sans serif fonts, traditional fonts. They also, we can also consider adapting lettering styles to specific architectural context. If you are trying to draft a layout which only consists of an interior space, then you can try to manage that this interior space can be developed and all those architectural fonts can reflect the project's character and purpose. Right? If you are trying to draft out or sketch a particularly architectural elevation, then you can try to reflect that project's individual characteristics and purposes. So that always depends upon your architectural context. What kind of theme and what kind of drawing are you trying to provide to the client? Depending on that style, your architectural lettering will be decided. What kind of font and what kind of text, what kind of sizes you need to mention in your sketch or your drawing. So if you look at this drawing, can everyone see this image?
Yes.
So this drawing has pretty much everything in it, like elevations, plan, and different kinds of sections. But there is one thing missing. There is not much architectural lettering. There is not much nomenclature. So that's what we miss out when we don't provide nomenclature. You understand what I'm saying? See, this kind of drawing has been perfectly drafted. It is perfectly drafted, perfectly sketched out, but it is missing out on something which is called nomenclature, architectural lettering. Now, this kind of drawing may look simple, but the architectural lettering makes it so.
Can't hear you.
Can be observed in simple drawing, but this kind of drawing in which all the plans, all sections.
Your voice is not audible.
Now I am showing you these kind of drawings which we use in architecture or interior design, but in any kind of art form, may it be photography, may it be commercial or commercial arts or fine arts, or may it be civil engineering. Any kind of drawing has to have the architectural lettering or nomenclature along with it to provide utmost detail of each and every element's technical specification and sizes. Right? Anyone has any doubt related to this architectural lettering?
No.
Okay. So can we move on to the next and final, the most important point of this entire session?
Yes, please.
So does anyone know that what exactly perspective drawings mean? Anyone? What exactly is
Their visualization, how they see.
of
Not audible.
hello? Guys, can you hear me?
Yeah, now you're audible.
Sorry. I just lost my connection for a few seconds. Sorry. Let me just start presenting you that same drawing. Uh, can you guys see this next set of image?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can you know identify the perfect balance? So this kind of drawing has everything. This drawing has perfectly arranged all the primary principles and elements of composition which we have previously discussed. Like there is perfect balance. Horizontal balance is always there. There is perfect harmony in all kinds of shapes. There is perfect contrast which has been maintained through all the structural elements and all the background elements. There is perfect kind of rhythm which which we can sense by the flow of the arrangement of all elements. Correct? This kind of drawing has everything. So the point, what I am trying to tell you is, can anyone tell me what kind of perspective drawings are there? Like what are the types of perspective drawings?
There's 1 point perspective, 2 point.
Correct.
There's I think 3 point also.
Okay, so we will discuss about first 1 point and 2 point perspectives. Okay, so what kind of drawing this you think it is?
1 point.
Correct. So this is a 1 point perspective. Uh, this is a 1 point perspective drawing which includes all the principles and elements of the basic composition of this artwork. this drawing also, consists of all the key elements which we discussed: balance, harmony, contrast, and rhythm. Everything is there. So what is meant by one point perspective? Can anyone tell me what is meant by one point perspective? Anyone? So let me tell you guys what one point perspective means. Okay. So when we try to understand one point perspective, we have to understand how parallel lines, okay, all the parallel lines which are parallel to each and every other line in the same context, okay, how parallel lines actually converge to a single vanishing point or the single focal point on the horizon. Okay? If you look at these, the right hand side is basically the outline structure of this photograph, and the left hand side is actual photograph which the photographer has clicked or the draftsman has actually drafted by freehand, whatever it may be. But when you look at this kind of sketch or this kind of photo or this kind of drawing, you come to know that it's in one point perspective. How you come to know that all these lines, all these parallel, they converge to a single vanishing point, which we also call it as the focal point of the entire drawing. Right? So these kind of drawings are actually ideal for frontal views. Like if you are drafting any kind of drawing, like if you are drafting a drawing or a sketch of particular bungalow, may it be a building, may it be any infrastructure project, may it be any historical site, may it be your live sketching when you are attending those industrial site visits. So these kind of drawings are pretty much ideal for frontal views of any kind of buildings or objects. Right. So let me show you another image. See, now you will be able to correlate what I was trying to say. Why this kind of one point perspective is ideal for frontal views of building. Like if you are trying to draft any sketch, or if you are trying to grab any photograph, like like everyone uses smartphone nowadays. Now what we do is we try to take photograph of any architectural element or any visually appealing site, but we are always out of focus. Then we think of we see that image, and then we think that something is out of place. Why? Because we have not captured that image, we have not drafted that drawing, we have not sketched that particular thing in one perspective. That's why everything gets scattered. Nothing is in one place. But if you look at this photograph, you can see that these lines are converging to a single focal point, or which we also call it as vanishing point, and it always lies on the horizon. The furthermost you can see the single vanishing point lying on that point. The very end, like if you look at this image particularly, forget about everything else. Forget about those columns. Forget about those beautiful marble or granite flooring which they have laid. Forget about the beautiful lighting which they have provided in the entire ceiling and in between the arches. Forget about everything. If you know that you are trying to find that vanishing point, you have to look beyond all these objects. You just have to look for the furthermost point which you can see in this image, and that time you will come to know that all these parallel lines, they are always vanishing at one single point, and that's when you come to know that this is a one point perspective. Anyone has any queries related to this thing, one point perspective? Anyone? Anyone has any doubt related to one point perspective? Can we move on to the next point, which is two-point perspective?
Yes.
Okay. Can you guys see this image? Guys?
Yes, yes.
So can anyone tell me what two-point perspective might mean? What do we mean by two-point perspective?
Where all the lines of the drawing end at two opposite points.
Correct. So in one-point perspective, as we
Two
all
vanishing point.
sorry.
Two vanishing points.
Correct. Yes. So in one perspective, there was only one vanishing point or one focal point. Correct. So all the lines, may it be horizontal lines, may it be diagonal lines, all the parallel lines, were converging at one single point. Correct? Now, in this 2-point perspective, we get to know that they introduce us to the vanishing point method, which also emphasize depth and angles to all your sketches. Correct? Because uh, in 1-point perspective, all those parallel lines were converging at one point. And what is happening in 2-point perspective is that all the sketch or all the draft which you are making are coming out of those two vanishing points. Right? These lines are not converging at one single point. In fact, the entire draft, the entire sketch which you are trying to make are coming out of two vanishing points or two focal points. So what kind of what kind of style or what kind of space will be suitable for portraying such kind of 2-point perspectives? Can anyone tell me? Like what I mean to ask is, what kind of drawing is suitable to be presented in 2-point perspective format? Like 1-point perspective was ideal for frontal views of buildings or objects. So in what situation 2-point perspective is really useful?
Something like
Angle
speed.
view.
Correct. Yes.
Two sides.
Okay. Can we also talk about the objects which are angled in particular position? Like, can we talk about angles, different kind of angles? So if you look at these two converging points, like the focal points, so lot of different angles have been created all over this entire sketch or space. So few angles you may call them as 10 degree, some angles are of 25 degree, 30, 60. Every kind of angle has been generated through these two focal points. Am I right? So that is why these kinds of 2-point perspectives are really suitable for portraying objects or the interior or exterior spaces from an angled perspective. Because some of you guys mentioned that we can now imagine roads going around the building. That is why, because you are seeing this perspective through the terms of angles which have been created from these two vanishing points. Right? Anyone has doubts related to this 2-point perspective? Can we move on to the next kind of perspective drawing, which is a 3-point perspective?
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
Let me just share you an example in terms of sketch. Are you able to see this image?
Yes.
Basically, this image, it actually means is it has been properly drafted with all the right drafting tools. This is not a freehand sketch. First of all, let me clear you guys with all these details. This is not a proper hand drafted sketch. Whoever has drafted this sketch has properly used all the drafting tools which we can possibly imagine. Now this is called 3-point perspective. 3-point perspective incorporates third vanishing point, or third which we can say focal point. Now what it does is it allows dynamic and well dynamic and well dramatic views which we can imagine in a 3D space. Okay, so when we were looking at 1-point and 2-point perspectives, those drawings were looking 3D, but we knew that those are 2D in nature. Like when you try to draft it on a paper, that time you already knew that you are trying to draft these drawings in 3D format, but they will always be held accountable in 2D format itself, because your paper space is in 2-dimensional, correct? Now what 3-point perspective does for you, why is it more empathetic and more useful for us in terms of technology is, there are few machines in which you can draft entire 3D model. You know what that machine is called? That machine is called 3D printing machine. Okay. So what 3D printing machine does is it incorporates 3-point perspective in terms of X, Y, and Z axis, not in the basically just for drafting on a piece of paper. But what it does is it incorporates a third vanishing point, and it allowing for the all the dynamic and dramatic uh, object and its details which you are trying to incorporate in that sketch. For example, there is a perspective drawing called bird's eye view. Okay, there is a perspective drawing called bird's eye view. So bird's eye view, what it basically means is when you try to imagine a bird flying above all the skyline of a city. So what that bird sees from above the entire space is called bird's eye view. So 3-point perspective is basically a bird's eye view drafted in such a format where there are not one, not two, but 3 vanishing points, which give you the sense of height, correct? Which give you the sense of looking up all the tall structures. or when you are trying to capture, different kinds of tall buildings, different kinds of tall mega structures or infrastructural elements, when they are really tall, okay, that time we use 3-point perspective or bird's eye view.